Okay, I need you to stay with me, because what happened this morning has never occurred in the entire history of the American Republic. At 4:08 a.m. Eastern Time, the Vice President and 8 cabinet members signed a written declaration invoking Section 4 of the 25th Amendment, formally removing the President from power. That declaration was delivered to Congress. Under the Constitution, presidential power transferred to the Vice President at that moment. But the President is refusing to accept it. He's barricaded himself inside the White House. He's ordered Secret Service to prevent cabinet members from entering. And he's telling supporters on social media that this is not constitutional process but a coup, an illegal seizure of power that must be stopped. Which means right now, 2 people are claiming presidential authority, 2 separate command structures are issuing orders, and every institution from the Pentagon to the Secret Service must decide whose orders are legitimate. If you're just finding this, subscribe immediately, because what unfolds over the next 48 hours will be studied for generations. Section 4 of the 25th Amendment is the emergency failsafe for removing a president whose judgment has become so impaired that continuing to exercise power threatens national security. It's designed for the nightmare scenario: a president who is alive, conscious, asserting authority, but whose decision-making has deteriorated to the point where the vice president and cabinet conclude they have no choice but to act. It's never been invoked. Not during Watergate, not during any presidential crisis, until 4:08 this morning. Here's how it works. The Vice President and a majority of cabinet members, that's 8 secretaries, transmit a written declaration to Congress stating the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of office. The instant that declaration reaches Congress, power transfers to the Vice President. No hearings, no debate, no judicial review. Immediately, the Vice President becomes acting president with full constitutional authority. That happened at 4:08 a.m. Constitutionally, legally, the Vice President is now president, but the person who held that office yesterday is claiming the process doesn't apply to him. Let me walk you through what triggered this. According to sources with direct knowledge, the cabinet convened in emergency session last night at 10:45 p.m. at the Vice President's residence. No public notice, no official schedule. Cabinet members arrived separately using personal vehicles. What forced this meeting was an incident yesterday afternoon in the White House Situation Room. The president was receiving a routine national security briefing when he allegedly became fixated on what he perceived as an imminent threat. Intelligence officials assured him no such threat existed. He dismissed their assessments, accused them of lying, and ordered an immediate military response. Sources described the order as an unprovoked act of war against a nation that poses no threat to the United States. The Secretary of Defense stated he would not transmit such an order without legal review and proper authorization. The president threatened to fire him on the spot and find someone who would obey. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff stated directly that the military would not execute the order without confirmation it was lawful. The president left the room enraged. Within 2 hours, the vice president was making calls. By 10:45 p.m., 8 cabinet secretaries had gathered. The discussion lasted hours. These are serious people who understand what Section 4 represents. But sources say the pattern had become undeniable. Weeks of erratic behavior, decisions disconnected from reality, rage at advisors providing information he didn't want, growing paranoia, judgment fundamentally compromised. The declaration was drafted after midnight. Each cabinet member signed individually, knowing the consequences. The vice president signed last at 3:52 a.m. At 4:08 a.m., federal couriers delivered sealed envelopes to Capitol Hill. Power transferred at that moment. The president was informed around 5:45 a.m. Sources describe volcanic rage. He began calling cabinet members who signed, screaming threats. He demanded White House counsel stop this. Counsel explained Section 4 is constitutional process outside judicial control. Then the president gave the order creating this crisis. He directed Secret Service to secure the residence and prevent anyone, including the vice president, from entering. And this is where everything breaks. Secret Service protects the president. They take orders from the president. But if Section 4 was properly invoked, the president is no longer president. The vice president is acting president. So whose orders does Secret Service follow? According to sources, this created an unprecedented split. The special agent in charge believes his duty is to the person until they physically leave. Other officials argue duty shifts to whoever holds constitutional authority. You have federal agents on opposite sides, some maintaining the perimeter the president ordered, others refusing orders from someone they believe no longer holds authority. Armed agents who may receive conflicting orders and must decide whose to follow. Then there's the military question. If Section 4 was properly invoked, the Vice President is acting Commander-in-Chief. So whose orders carry authority? The chairman of the Joint Chiefs convened emergency meetings at the Pentagon. They're reportedly moving toward recognizing the acting president's authority, unless the president sends a counter-declaration. But there's no precedent. Different commanders could reach different conclusions. If competing orders are issued, whose do they execute? The nuclear question is most terrifying. The president has a military aid with the nuclear football. The vice president has an identical one. Normally, the vice president's codes are inactive, but Section 4 addresses incapacity. When the declaration was delivered, did the vice president's codes activate? Did the president's deactivate? Sources say there's intense disagreement at the Pentagon. Some argue constitutional transfer means the vice president's codes are now active. Others say both should remain active. Still others say 2 active codes with 2 claimants is catastrophic vulnerability. This cannot be walked back. Nuclear deterrence depends on adversaries knowing the president can order strikes that will be executed. If there's visible confusion about who controls those weapons, deterrence collapses. Russia is watching. China is watching. They see American command structure in disarray. They see 2 people claiming authority, and they're calculating. The president has posted continuously since learning of the declaration. Posts escalated from claiming illegality to direct mobilization calls. One from 6:30 a.m. reads, "The deep state has launched a coup. This is treason. Patriots must defend the presidency. Come to Washington." That's not coded, it's explicit. Secret Service reports increased extremist chatter, militia groups discussing this as their moment, law enforcement preparing for violence within 24 hours. The vice president released a statement at 8 a.m. The action taken this morning was constitutional duty, when circumstances left no other responsible option. I call on all Americans to respect the process and allow Congress to fulfill its role. Doesn't attack personally, frames as duty, but asserts he now holds authority. If you understand the stakes here, hit that like button right now. This engagement determines whether this information reaches people who need it. Congress is in emergency session. Under the Constitution, if the president counter-declares, Congress must vote within 21 days, but removal requires 2/3 of both chambers, 67 senators, 290 House members. That's overwhelming supermajority. Right now, that doesn't exist. Republicans are fractured. Some call this a coup, others silent. Democrats support it but need Republican votes. We could face 21 days where 2 people claim authority while Congress debates and potentially fails to reach the threshold. And here's the part most people are missing. Legal scholars say if facts are as reported, the cabinet acted properly. Section 4 exists for these circumstances, but they note the framers assumed all parties would respect the process. They never anticipated a president declaring the mechanism illegitimate and barricading himself. The Constitution provides process but no enforcement if the president refuses to comply. That's the core crisis. If someone with physical control of the White House and loyalty from armed personnel decides constitutional procedures don't apply, how do you enforce them? Send marshals to remove a president claiming he's still president? Order military extraction? Wait 21 days while 2 people command the armed forces? Every option carries enormous risk. Cabinet members who signed face serious threats. Secretary of State received death threats, moved to secure location. Secretary of Defense increased security. Attorney General operating from undisclosed facility. The president hasn't explicitly called for violence, but calling them traitors creates environment where supporters may act. This is no longer contained. International reaction is swift. British PM tried calling, told situation unclear. France issued statement about stability concerns. NATO convened emergency meeting about command implications. Our allies watch American government fracture, wondering if partnerships remain stable. Here's what happens next. The president can counter-declare, asserting no inability. Power transfers back immediately. Then vice president and cabinet have 4 days to reaffirm. If they do, Congress votes within 21 days. During that period, vice president remains acting president. But sources say the president's team is divided. Some say engage the process. Others say engaging legitimizes it. What if he doesn't counter-declare, but claims he never lost authority? The Constitution doesn't address that clearly. We're watching. Does he counter-declare? Do cabinet members reverse? Does he try firing them? What does military do with competing orders? What happens if violence erupts in Washington? Security is escalating. D.C. police requested National Guard, but D.C. Guard answers to the president. If the president orders them to support his position, and acting president orders otherwise, whose order do commanders follow? No clear answer. Confusion in a security crisis is catastrophic. Something is going to crack. The declaration is delivered. Constitutional process has started. The president has physical control and armed personnel loyalty. The vice president has constitutional authority, but no physical control. Congress must vote, but may lack votes. The military must choose whose orders to follow. Let me tell you what cabinet members understood when they signed at 4:08 a.m. Some lines cannot be uncrossed. Some thresholds leave no room for waiting. They concluded a president who would order unprovoked military action, threaten officials for questioning him, continue exercising command with judgment that compromised posed immediate danger. They invoked the mechanism the framers provided for exactly that. The wall is already fracturing. Secret Service split, military debating protocols, Congress convening, allies questioning stability, President barricaded calling this treason, Vice President claiming authority from across town, 2 nuclear footballs, 2 claims to command, 2 versions of presidential power. This story needs more eyes. Share this with everyone who needs to understand. Because the next 48 hours shape presidential accountability forever. The emergency mechanism is activated. The president refuses compliance. Every institution must now choose. Here's what happens if this doesn't resolve. If Congress votes and doesn't reach 2/3, president regains authority. Cabinet members attempted removal and failed. Consequences would be severe. If president refuses to counter-declare and stays barricaded, we face indefinite limbo. If violence erupts, if protesters clash, if agents face off, the crisis escalates beyond constitutional process. But cabinet members made their choice. They signed knowing the cost. They concluded doing nothing posed greater danger than invoking the most extreme mechanism available. Now every institution makes that choice. Military commanders, Secret Service agents, Congress members, federal marshals. Every person in authority must decide whose orders they'll follow. Those decisions determine not just this crisis, but presidential power for generations. The next 48 hours will answer whether power bows to law or law bends to power. Subscribe and turn on notifications. When the president counter-declares, you'll see it here. When Congress votes, you'll see it here. When the military chooses, you'll see it here. This is constitutional history being written. This is the test the framers built the system to survive. This is the moment that determines whether American democracy functions when someone with power decides rules don't apply. The answer will echo for generations. Stay here.